The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor with a soft chime, and Elijah Turner stepped out, adjusting his tie. His reflection in the mirrored walls, calm, composed, controlled, the kind of control he had learned to wear like armor over the years. The office beyond buzzed with quiet energy, keyboards clicking, voices low, deals being built, and conversations that never quite reached the surface. He walked toward the conference room where his name was already printed on the agenda: senior partner, candidate presentation. His chest tightened, just slightly, not from doubt but from knowing how much more he had to prove compared to everyone else inside. When he entered the room, conversations dipped for half a second, then resumed. One of the partners glanced up, surprised before masking it quickly. "You must be here for the support team," he said casually. Elijah didn't flinch. "No, I'm here to present," he replied, placing his folder on the table. The room shifted, eyes moving between him and the printed agenda, realization settling in. Awkwardly, the same partner cleared his throat. "Right, of course, let's begin then." Elijah connected his laptop, the screen lighting up with months of work data, strategy projections, every number checked twice, every detail sharpened, because he knew mistakes wouldn't just be mistakes for him, they would be confirmation for someone else. He spoke clearly, confidently, walking them through the proposal, watching their faces for signs of engagement, but what he saw instead were interruptions, subtle at first, then more direct. "Are you sure about that figure?" one partner asked before he could finish explaining. Another leaned forward. "I think we might need a second opinion on these numbers." Elijah paused only briefly. "The numbers are accurate," he said evenly. "I've cross-verified them with 3 independent reports." They exchanged glances, not convinced, not because of the data but because of him. He could feel it, the weight of doubt that existed before he even opened his mouth. Then, halfway through his presentation, a junior associate named Brian, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly leaned forward. "Actually, I reviewed similar data last quarter," he said casually, "and it aligns with what Elijah is saying." The same partner who questioned him nodded immediately. "Well, if that's the case, then it sounds promising." Elijah stood there for a second, the shift so quick, so obvious, it almost felt surreal. The same information, the same numbers, but now validated because someone else had echoed it. He finished his presentation without missing a beat, but when it ended and polite applause followed, he didn't sit down right away. Instead, he looked directly at them all and said, "Next time, believe the data. The first time you hear it." The room went still, not hostile, not loud, just aware in a way it hadn't been before, and Elijah finally took his seat, knowing that whether they admitted it or not, something had just been forced into the open. The sun was setting over a quiet suburban street when Nia Walker pulled into the driveway of her new home, the moving truck already gone, boxers stacked neatly inside, visible through the windows. She stepped out, stretching slightly, taking in the moment. She had worked years for this, late nights, extra shifts, sacrifices that had led to this exact place, this exact key in her hand. She smiled softly, walking toward the front door when a police car rolled slowly past, then stopped a few houses down. She noticed it but didn't think much of it until the officer stepped out and began walking toward her, his expression neutral but focused. "Ma'am," he called out. Nia turned. "Yes, can I help you?" "We received a call about a suspicious individual in the neighborhood," he said, glancing at her, then at the house behind her. Nia blinked, surprised. "Suspicious?" she repeated. "Yes, someone reported that you were trying to access this property without permission," he continued, his tone professional but distant. Nia let out a small, incredulous breath. "This is my house," she said, holding up the keys. "I just moved in today." The officer nodded slowly, as if considering the possibility. "Do you have any documentation to prove that?" Nia stared at him for a moment, the question hanging heavier than it should. "Do you want me to prove I live in my own house?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with disbelief. "It's just procedure," he replied. Nia glanced around, noticing curtains shifting slightly in neighboring houses, eyes watching, waiting. She reached into her bag, pulling out the paperwork, hands steady but her chest tightening as she handed it over. He reviewed it carefully, longer than necessary, before finally nodding. "Everything seems to be in order. Sorry for the inconvenience." Nia took the papers back, her gaze steady. "It's not an inconvenience," she said quietly. "It's a pattern." The officer hesitated, as if he wanted to respond but didn't know how. Instead, he nodded once and returned to his car as he drove away. Nia stood there for a moment longer, then turned, unlocking her door. Stepping inside the house felt different now, not less hers, but more claimed, more defined. And as she set her keys down, she knew one thing clearly: she wasn't going to spend a single day here feeling like she needed permission to belong. The store was bright, almost too bright, the kind of lighting that made everything look sharper, cleaner, more controlled, as if nothing messy could exist inside it. Jordan Hayes walked through the aisles slowly, headphones in his ears, music playing low enough to still hear the world around him. He picked up a few items, comparing labels, reading ingredients, taking his time like any other customer. But after a few minutes he noticed it, the same employee appearing in every aisle he entered, pretending to rearrange shelves, glancing up just enough to keep him in view. Jordan exhaled slowly, pulling one earbud out. "Is there something I can help you with?" he asked, turning to face the man directly. The employee stiffened, slightly caught off guard. "No, just doing my job," he replied quickly. Jordan nodded. "Then let me do mine, which is shopping." The employee forced a small smile before moving away, but not far enough. Jordan continued browsing, but the tension lingered, the unspoken accusation that hung in the air heavier than any words. Finally, he walked to the counter, placing his items down. The cashier scanned them without meeting his eyes. "Your total is 40 to 50. Jordan handed over his card, then paused, looking at the security monitor behind the counter where he could see himself from multiple angles. Every step tracked, every movement recorded. He gestured toward the screen. "You keep that level of attention on everyone, or just me?" The cashier hesitated, fingers hovering over the register. "I don't control the cameras," he said quietly. Jordan leaned slightly forward. "I'm not talking about the cameras," he replied. "I'm talking about the assumption." The cashier swallowed, glancing briefly at the employee who had been following Jordan earlier, standing a few feet away, pretending not to listen. There was no response, no explanation, just silence. Jordan took his receipt, his items, and walked out, the automatic doors sliding open with a soft mechanical sound as he stepped into the open air. He took a deep breath, the tension easing slightly but not disappearing, because moments like that didn't just end at the door. They stayed with you, followed you, shaped the way you moved through the world. And as he walked down the street, he knew he hadn't imagined any of it, and he wasn't going to ignore it either. Night settled over the city as Olia Cotta stood outside, a high-rise office building, her reflection faint in the glass doors. She had been called in for a late meeting. Something urgent, they had said, something that couldn't wait until morning. She stepped inside the lobby, quiet except for the security desk where a guard looked up immediately, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Can I help you?" he asked. Olia nodded. "I'm here for the executive meeting on the 29th floor, she said, giving the company name. The guard glanced at his list, then back at her. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Olia felt the question, lawn sharper than it sounded. "Yes, I am." He studied her for a moment longer, then shook his head. "I don't see your name on the list." Olia pulled out her phone, opening the email, showing him the invitation, sent directly from the CEO. He looked at it, then back at her again. "Still uncertain. You'll need to wait here while I conform," he said, reaching for the phone. Minutes passed, the silence stretching as Olia stood there alone in the empty lobby. Finally, the elevator doors opened and a group of executives stepped out, laughing mid-conversation. Among them was the CEO himself, his eyes landing on Olia instantly, his expression shifting from casual to surprise, then to concern. "Olia, what are you doing down here?" he asked, walking toward her. She gestured lightly toward the desk. "Apparently I'm not on the list." The CEO turned to the guard, his tone calm but firm. "She's leading the meeting." The guard's face drained of color, immediately apologizing, stepping back as the realization hit. Olia held his gaze for a second, not angry, not loud, just clear, and then she turned, walking toward the elevator. With the CEO beside her as the doors closed, she caught her reflection again. This time steadier, stronger, and when she stepped out onto the 29th floor, the room inside already waiting for her, she didn't hesitate. She walked in, took her place at the head of the table, and began, because she had learned something long ago. If they weren't going to expect her to belong, she would show them anyway and make it impossible to deny. The room quieted as Olia began speaking, her voice steady, measured, every word landing exactly where it needed to. The presentation flowed smoothly, data, strategy, timelines, all delivered with a precision that left little room for doubt. The same Kitty who had barely noticed her moments ago, were now leaning forward, listening, asking questions, engaging, not because they suddenly changed, but because she gave them no choice. The meeting stretched longer than expected, discussion building momentum, until finally the CEO nodded in approval. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. And just like that, the tone in the room shifted from evaluation to acceptance. But Olia didn't smile, didn't relax, not yet, because she understood something deeper. Acceptance given in a moment could be taken just as easily in another. When the meeting ended, people gathered their things, some offering brief compliments, others avoiding eye contact entirely. She packed her laptop slowly, aware of the weight of what had just happened, not just the success of the presentation, but everything that came before it, the lobby, the hesitation, the doubt that had followed her into the building like a shadow. As she stepped back into the elevator alone, the doors closing softly, she exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Her reflection stared back at her again, but this time it carried something different, not just strength but certainty, the kind that didn't need validation from anyone else. Outside, the night air felt cooler, sharper, grounding. Olia paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the building, lights glowing across dozens of floors, each one holding its own stories, its own moments of silence and confrontation. She thought about Elijah in that boardroom, about Nia standing in her driveway, about Jordan walking out of that store, each moment separate yet connected by something. invisible but constant, a pattern that repeated itself in different forms, different places, different voices, and yet every time it met resistance, it cracked just a little more. She reached into her bag, pulling out her phone, her fingers hovering for a second before opening a new message, not to respond, not to react, but to document, to remember. Because stories like these didn't just disappear, they either got buried or they got told, and she had no intention of letting them be buried. A car passed by, its headlights cutting briefly across her face before fading into the distance, and in that moment, Aaliyah realized something that settled deep within her. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about changing what people expected to see before she even spoke, before she even entered a room. She took a slow breath, then started walking forward, heels steady against the pavement, each step deliberate, because the next time someone questioned her presence, her place, her right to be there, she wouldn't just answer, she would make it impossible for them to ever ask again.